Hope all of you are staying safe and doing well. A warm welcome to all of you from etcfo.com. My name is Vartika Rawat, and in this special series, Future of Compliance, brought to you by Clear from the makers of Clear Tax, we bring to you another exclusive fireside chat on accuracy and compliance, why technology is important for managing the tax landscape. Now, the increased regulation requires businesses to not only be accurate when complying, but to be proactive in identifying potential risk and to be able to mitigate them. So, not only must a business provide accurate information related to business income and taxes paid, but proper invoice matching and accurate ITC claims have also become necessary compliance for businesses. To ensure compliance, it is important that companies explore how technology can help them stay ahead of the curve. The consistency of this data, drive a single source of truth for auditors, and reconcile data make CFO's job light and easier. This fireside chat explores how tax technology increases accuracy and compliance through comprehensive data management. How should CFOs make sure they adhere to tax departments' increasing regulations and also enhance audit and closing activities while maintaining the bottom line? So today we have with us two industry veterans, Ramesh Swaminathan, who's the Executive Director, Global CFO and Head Corporate Affairs, Lupin, and also Rohit Razdan, who's the CBO, Clear. Hello and welcome both the panelists. So, starting with the first question, I would come to you, Ramesh, and I'll ask you that, being 100% accurate and compliant, is it an exaggeration or is it achievable? So I'm asking this in the context of organizations' tax compliance. What role is technology playing in managing your tax landscape?
Very interesting question that you're asking me. But before I answer that, I think you need to understand the context in which this question is being posed to me. Any viable tax operating model will have to focus on four pillars: people, processes, data, and technology. Through digital systems, standardized reporting formats, and electronic interfaces, tax authorities are able to access a rich trove of information. You'd be aware of this. That means better data collection combined with increased processing power allows the government to improve existing ways of collecting taxes. If there's one thing that has been learned in this pandemic, it is that you need to be digitally agile. All of this is actually focusing a lot of companies to be a lot more sure when they actually make the submissions to the authorities. With the rapidly changing tax landscape and government's focus on transparency, embracing technology, it is important for us also to be absolutely tax compliant. However, I would rush to add that it's impossible to be 100% accurate, because of the dynamic nature of this entire thing, complex, dynamic, emerging tax structures, really. But however, we have deployed several cutting-edge solutions as part of our digital transformation to ensure accuracy in reporting and for being 100% compliant. A transaction-level real-time reporting requirements being forced on us by the government across the world requires business to be absolutely accurate in terms of data capture and appropriate reporting. We have employed a lot of technologies for this. RPAs, which is essentially routine for automating a lot of routine transactions, rule-based tasks, and so on. We also have things like ClickView for analytics being used extensively. A digital solution is used to keep a systematic track of correspondences with tax authorities. And that's extremely important because sometimes you lose the paper and then you'll have a problem in saying that I wrote this and so on. So to that extent, we keep a very systematic track of the correspondences also. Technology is indeed playing a major role in this change of mindset in the way we actually do things. To the extent we are also sometimes thinking of outsourcing the tax function, which actually lowers the cost, streamlining processes, implementing expert opinions, and so on, to actually free up the time of the tax personnel to deliver more in terms of strategic decision making and tax planning itself.
All right, sir. So according to you, a viable tax operating model will focus on people, process, data, and technology. And, in your organization, you're using RPA, ClickView solutions, outsourcing some of the function, because according to you, you say that it's not only about streamlining and freeing up time of tax personnel, but it is also cost efficient. Right. So on that note, I'll come to Rohit. And Rohit, I'll ask you the question that how technology can help CFOs stay ahead of the curve. And how has tax technology been helpful for business? So I'm asking this in terms of efficiency that it has increased, or higher returns that it has given the businesses. So over to you, sir.
So I think technology, the role of technology on the taxation and compliance side has just started in my opinion, right? Like because if you look at it from 2017 to 2019, 2020, right, they were still kind of the code was being finalized. And as the tax code gets finalized only after that, so the early part of technology curve was just people keeping up with the code, right? The tax manufacturers like ourselves just keeping up with the code and making sure the code fits the right. So the efficiency phase is starting now, right? So I think the first thing is, today, if somebody wants, like an enterprise wants, there are tools available which can allow you to do all of your tax filing on a single click, or relatively speaking within like half an hour or so, right? This was practically impossible earlier. So from an efficiency standpoint, it is very, very simple at this point of time. You have to do spend some upfront effort to get set up for that. But once that happens, you can do month of month filings very, very simply. Okay. An important part of that is like ERP integrations, which companies like us do, which is we connect with your ERPs, and we do all the piping one time so that all the right data is kind of coming through the right pipes, gets processed in the right way, and gets submitted to the government. So that's one. Second is that there is also a lot of error prevention that we can help do. Like, so for example, if let's say there is like some negative field in, that you have somehow recorded in your system, and that would have gone as is to the government, right? Now that won't happen, right? Because now there are all these checks and balances that these middleware companies like ourselves, right, that are putting and which ensure that any basic errors, right? And especially in cloud scale technology, as you're aware, what happens is we see from thousands of companies and lakhs of submissions, right? What are the typical errors people do, right? So we see we learn to catch those errors, and we implement it for the whole solution itself, so that even if you are making some error for the first time, we can still catch it, because we will see that is outside the normal course of things, right? Third is the so this is the error side of things, right? The third is the input tax credit side, right, which is very, very important from a GST perspective, right? As many of the viewers and listeners would be probably aware, a big problem in the not the problem, but a feature of necessarily the current GST regime is it works on tax credits, right? So if your vendors do not do their job properly, you can end up paying more taxes because you have not gotten the credits. Now, there are lots of ways through which capturing these input tax credits is becoming easier because of technology, right? For many people, actually, especially even within our clients, we have seen sometimes they're not even aware what is the money that is being left on the table, right? Secondly, how to capture that money that's being left on the table sometimes is not manually possible, because you have to, I don't know, communicate for every month, right, with, let's say, 5,000 vendors. So just imagine you are sitting in August, and you're reconciling in, like it's like a 12 to 18 month window in which these input tax credits can be claimed, right? So you have a 18 months times like 5,000 vendors grid, and you have to tell everybody what is due, what is not due. You have to keep checking it, reconciling it. So I think these are all the, I would say, things that we do. And lastly, I think at some level, there is also internal process controls, right? That can be put, right? Workflows, approval mechanisms, working your auditors and internal companies working on the same platform, which is also possible through technology, right? Otherwise, it how generally is as everybody knows how things generally happen is you send them Excel, they send you Excel, then you have like 16 sets of Excels flowing, between the two companies, and that becomes a nightmare, right? If let's say the guy who was handling your Excels leaves after 2 years, right, for some other job, even within the same company, it becomes a nightmare, right? Because the transfer of knowledge is so critical, right? So those things also can be minimized. So I think that journey has just started, in my opinion. It's just 1.5 years old, and in the next 5 to 10 years, in my opinion, that will become. If anybody is not taking the journey, it would be it would have to be some very, very solid reason. Otherwise, it would be a slam dunk.
Very articulately put that, today the technology is 1 to 1.5 year old, and in this period, where are we right now? We are at, simplification of usage has been there in tax technology, streamlining ERP so that the uniformity of information can be there, at the back end. Then there is prevention of error that is being targeted, through these technologies. And if you look at input tax credit, so capturing those ITC misses is what you're saying the tax technology is doing. And also tackling internal controls in an organization, which is very important part of compliance. So very well articulated. So on that note, I'll come to Ramesh and I'll ask him that, do you as a CFO have a tax technology plan for your organization, and how much have you allocated budget to tax technology?
We have an enterprise digital transformation plan. This is not merely focused on taxation. It is actually for several processes across all our, an entire value chain, so to speak. And naturally, this includes the tax, function as well. Most of our tax processes and reporting have already been, digitally driven with minimum human intervention. As I said, it is impossible to be 100% compliant without the aid of technology. And considering the transaction level real-time reporting requirement of the government, it's extremely important to actually do all that it takes to be there. So we are using technology, and we've been doing this for a long time. The fortunate thing about India is that the private sector technology companies have also risen to the occasion and have come out with a lot of software which will help us to do this. So we are, whilst the government itself is upping the ante in terms of the way they see, revenue leakage, and if there's any possibility of expanding the tax base and tracking a lot of transactions itself, it's equally incumbent on part of the corporates to kind of, do what it takes to be really there. So there is a lot of reliance on software, and the good thing about it is also available. We have been spending a lot of money on technology, across all of our functions. I would say the total spend is close to about 2.5% of our overall total sales. But I wouldn't say that it is actually for only, for taxation alone. Taxation, of course, is being considered when you take the overall plan. And this, the allocation for taxation is somewhat kind of captured in the overall allocation for digitization of all our processes.
All right, sir. So basically, you're saying that this is an enterprise, there is an enterprise digitalization plan, which includes the tax technology function as well. And the total spends that you have allocated is 2 to 3% of total sales. But it is not just for the taxation captured, but for the overall digitalization. But, so we would also want to ask you that, that apart from the budget allocation, is there a tax technology plan that you're focusing on?
I'm saying that we actually do a lot of stuff in terms of digitization for all our value adding processes. And this being an extremely important function, because the government's eye is also onto this, we also take care of this, but it's not as though we are dedicating resources alone for this. It's for along with this. It's impossible to track. This is being spent for taxation alone.
All right. So, we'll come to Rohit on that note, and I'll ask him that, how has tax technology increased accuracy and compliance through comprehensive data management?
Yeah, so I think, see, firstly, taxes and submissions and reconciliations, and then potentially litigations and so on, right? It's all about massive amounts of data that you can understand, and you can have confidence around what you have submitted is right. So at this point of time, the role of technology, right, has been, like we were mentioning earlier, it's very early right now, and we have just figuring out how to get the right data and process the right data, right? So that's kind of how early it is, right? Now, in terms of accuracy, right, there are lots and lots of checks and balances that the technology puts in, right, to say that, hey, on multiple cuts, right? So, for example, let's say you're doing any filing, right? So you can check through technology. Okay, what was for any particular vendor, right? What was the trend in the last 12 months, 18 months, 24 months? Right? That tells you about whether there's a vendor level flaw. Okay, you can check again at an item level, right? Because all these errors happen, and at the right level of zoom out, you can see that there is a change in pattern, right? That allows you to capture things very, very quickly, right? Second thing also is the things like seasonalities and so on also can be captured, right? So it's fundamentally, it has become now an artificial intelligence game. Lots and lots of data which is being captured and warehoused in the right secure fashion can then be analyzed and caught for errors and so on, right? The last thing I would say is like the part about accuracy, which uh, which is again a design level thing. Again, I would go back to the one of the biggest problems that large companies are facing, right? Let's say if you have a 1,000 crore, 2,000 crore purchase, right? At that level, to miss 10, 15, 20 crores of tax credits, input tax credits, right? And a small inaccuracy there adds up to like 10 or 20 crores, right? Now, for large companies which are large purchases but thin margins, right? That's a big loss, right? So fundamentally, right, there is two aspects of technology that we should be kind of thinking about a lot, right? One is what keeps you away from any kind of, let's say, reputational or fine, those kind of things, right? Which is again one level of submission level accuracy, right? That's it. And the second accuracy that we have to think about is whether you claimed everything that was due to you. Okay, so both are different technological tools that I can't get too much in details of right now, but both have different technology tools and both lead to significant, I would say, prevention. One is an intangible, like a reputation, and you might have seen particular companies that these days. See, government is going now hammer and tongs behind GST. Let's say inaccuracies in GST, right? For whatever reason, government is starting to go behind. That means large companies and how they're doing this, they're not going to the small guy and catching them. They're coming, looking at the big guys who are making errors, where they want to send the message that, hey, this is not done. We have given enough time now. We are getting into our fifth year. Now you have to make sure that things are okay. So that is a reputation risk. We have to capture that. And then in the very, very large companies, 15, 20, 25, 50 crores even, right, can be left on the table. And that's the cost of inaccuracy, right? And both those things, in my opinion, can only be solved through very sophisticated technology that understands, that expects a certain kind of data, and then anything that is not fitting in those patterns, it flags it up to the right people. The right people may be procurement people, maybe tax people, maybe AP team, right? Whichever payment scheme. So those have to be caught. So that's my few cents on this topic.
Very critical points you've raised. Um, and these are some of the challenges also that many businesses are facing. So you work in a very highly regulated sector, Ramesh. So what are the major challenges of tax landscape with digital way of doing business, in terms of business model and everything? So what are the major challenges that you are facing?
Yeah, absolutely spot on there. The Industrial Revolution 4.0 has taken the entire world by storm. It's across all the touch points in any business, so to speak. The business paradigm, the internal processes framework, the way we actually look at the efficiencies and so on. As it's very different. And of course, the interaction with the external shareholders. Technology is leading to creation of innovative and possibly very complex business models in every sector. And pharma is, of course, not going to be very different. Taxation laws in respect of such innovation and very complex business models. So there is a lot of this e-commerce things happening. And so to that extent, it's still evolving. And tax teams are facing a lot of challenges in finalizing a tax solution under the circumstances. Every new digital way of doing things throws up new challenges. You would appreciate there, both to the government as well as for, in fact, the user of this technology and for the guy who actually does the business paradigm, so to speak. In order to actually ensure appropriate revenue capture and for business to understand the potential tax implications, a lot of things have to be done. There's, of course, the clarity of the tax treatment and how do you actually interpret certain clauses and the like. So as the business plan itself is kind of changing, as the models are changing, then the evolving guidances and regulations on the tax front, one finds it pretty challenging for sure.
Right, sir. So every new digital way of doing business throws a new challenge. You're right in saying that. And finalizing a tax solution according to you is, how to capture revenue and business to understand potential implications is very important. And one of the challenges that you have highlighted is sorting out the interpretational challenges as well. So, right on point, sir. And, here we'll bring the expert here and we'll ask him that, as we know that many tax issues end up in years of litigation or arbitration. So, how is tax technology expected to change litigation and arbitration according to you?
Yes, Vatika, I think you're right that the in the early days of GST, as they were switching from excise and so on and so forth, right? It the litigations there had several elements to it. Firstly, the rules were so complicated that what was being litigated itself was sometimes unclear, and the government and an SSC, right, would often debate about whether or not about the facts themselves, right? Forget the interpretation of facts, they would debate on the facts itself. I think now in the last 3 to 5 years, I think things have become far more streamlined, right? That issues that used to take several years, right? I mean, there's always going to be some percentage where things are genuinely complicated. But if you look at the distribution of cases, right, the litigations are becoming faster now, right? The biggest driver of that is the regulator has gone digital, right? So now there is no human being sitting on the other side who is interpreting data differently depending on what view he has of which business, right? Or who he knows well, who he doesn't know. Those things are now out of the window, right? So now they have brought in a lot of data analytics. They have brought in a lot of AI in that, which again, right, which catches the errors, right? Now, so at this point of time, in my opinion, it has become a technology versus technology match, right? They are looking at the same data that you're submitting, and they are saying we find this logical and congruent, or we don't, right? At that point of time, you have to have your technology, your people who have to find the case, right? So, in my opinion, it has become far more efficient. If so, the government has gone digital. Now, the choice that you have is can you are you confident enough to not take technology and still be able to answer the question based on human or outsourced intelligence, right? See, outsourcing itself, right, is not okay. Let me put it this way: outsourcing is not the solution, right? It just reduces your headache. It doesn't make things more correct, right? Like whether your person is doing something or third person agency are doing something, that doesn't make it more correct. It just makes it like your guy, his life a little bit easier. So I think fundamentally where you adopt of technology, what technology do you adopt, and how are you ready? I think those are the things that I think are the basic things, right? And then second, I would already mention that one is post facto. I think the best preparation for litigation is just pre-submission, right? So pre-submission sophistication, right? Are you doing things on time, right? Things and are you doing things accurately? That can only happen, and as you are aware, things have to happen every month, right? Which means that unless, right, you get into a very sophisticated rhythm, right, of how these submissions happen, your probability of getting caught into a government, nest, right, becomes high, right? So I think pre-submission, whatever you do, it will be easier. And then if you have the right technology, even post-submission, right, many of these things have come as email. They want an email response, right? It becomes very easy for you to download the right reports, highlight whatever is the, let's say, difference in point of view, and ship it along. And I think government is becoming is very fair, right? They only eventually get stuck on the things which are genuinely complicated.
So it's technology versus technology, as you said, and as government is being sophisticated, so has to be the businesses, the corporate taxpayers. So very well said, sir. I'll come to Ramesh here and I'll ask him that, how are you as a CFO looking at providing tax information to tax authorities, such as, electronic filing or real time reporting, as we say. And, it is happening at a fast pace. So how are you coping? And how has it impacted A, mindset towards compliance, and B, which is most importantly, your tax operations?
There has been a paradigm shift in tax compliance and reporting, especially after the implementation of GST. You would appreciate that. The
Right.
unprecedented focus of the government in ensuring real-time reporting of transactions has made it pretty difficult for us to catch up. Also, to be honest, it is becoming a pretty challenging that way. The importance of technology in tax matters in this case cannot be overemphasized. The enterprise-wise transaction-level data available at tax departments provides a great opportunity for them for sure. Reading and interpreting this rich data would provide deep insights, insofar as the government is concerned, and so far as the business also is concerned, for strategic planning also. Tax teams are not only expected to be experts in tax legislation, but are also expected to be digitally savvy and have excellent data analytical skills today.
Right.
With a greater increase in interdependence between business and tax teams, tax professionals must be able to communicate tax concepts in a very simple business language, so to speak.
So, according to you, there has been a paradigm shift in tax landscape post GST, and tax teams, you're saying, are not only expected to be experts but digitally savvy and have analytical insights as well. All right, and they're required to simplify complicated rules, right? So this is how the tax teams are changing now, right? So another question that I would want to ask you, Ramesh, here is that, how should CFOs make sure that they adhere to tax departments increasing regulation and also enhance audit and closing activities while maintaining the bottom line?
I think, firstly, having a strong and dynamic in-house team to be abreast of the fast-changing tax landscape, capable of handling focused audits, etc., is the need of the hour. There's several moving parts, to which taxation, is confronted with every day, and this is actually a challenge. It is now a given that organizations need to be audit ready on a real-time basis.
Right.
Business cannot wait for audit notices or show cause notices not to initiate audit preparation. Every tax position needs to be backed with robust documentation and relevant data. And of course, lapses can really hurt the bottom line, considering the harsh interest and penalty provisions associated with that, even for inadvertent misses that way. So one has to be very conscious of this. And once again, all of this is possible only by automating tax processes and continuous revenue of such processes for improvement and accommodating, the changes in law, the business models, and the like. All said and done, this is an extremely challenging time, a very interesting time, and it keeps us busy all the time for sure.
So you're saying that a dynamic in-house team is very important, and it is given that organizations need to be audit ready on a real-time basis, and every tax position needs to be backed up by right and robust documentation, and data lapses can really hit the bottom line. And automation is the way forward, is what you're saying, right? Right. All right. So, so Rohit, in your expert opinion, how should finance chiefs plan with foresight and with the changing policy landscape in mind when it comes to managing the tax landscape?
A great question. When you actually, I mean, at some level, a CFO's role, right, as a partner to CEO, right, is probably like equal parts on what happened in the last year or two, and in equal parts what will happen in the next year or two, right, which sometimes the business teams, can sometimes miss, right. So in that standpoint, I think the question about foresight and so on is actually very, very relevant. And I 100% agree with Ramesh that GST and that implementation, actually, it is less about the taxes themselves, in my opinion. It is more about now the nature of change and the broad direction of that where the businesses are taking it. Fundamentally, if you take a step back, right, and you see what has the government, right, and let's say the NDA government, right, as many of us are aware, and I'm just taking a broader context, is that they spent a lot of political capital, right, to push through a reform, right, which was very, very difficult to actually pull off. And what does that really mean, right? It means you have implemented a digital only tax system, which globally in the world, right, there are very few places, right? So you have taken a country which was largely operating on paper, right? And where, very often we would say, kind of over the, white economy, black economy, all these things are very, very prevalent and were seen as almost as the way to be, right? I mean, this is how India is, right? They have taken all that and shaken it up, right? And said, now nothing doing. Tax guys power goes away. It's a single set of rules. Submit digitally, get assessed digitally, everything, right? Now, this, in my opinion, this signals the change in which the governance and the corporate governance and taxation and so on is changing everywhere. And in my opinion, the way this is going is the government is going to go in each area that they find broken and important, right? Tax was one of those. In my opinion, it will go in other areas. It will go towards labor law and so on. A lot of people in a country like this, probably just like tax used to be 10 years back, where the best of the people used to do labor law taxes properly, and then large portion of people didn't do it properly, right? And then that's okay, right? Uh, Now I think it's going to go to labor law as well, right? Where right now you have certain set of companies which adhere to everything as per labor law. Other people take, labor security and all of these things kind of very, very loosely, right? So how this is coming is government is going to go into each area and drive APIs there, right? And say that these are the APIs. Now you have to make submission, timely submissions, and then we will put AI on top, right? And therefore, right, that's the way things will be. Today it is tax, tomorrow it will be everything else. Now I think most of the CFOs, at least on their weekends, recognize that this is going to happen, right? Like when they reflect on things, it seems very, very clearly that the playbook is set. So to get ready for that playbook, what do you have to do, right? I think first thing you have to do is you have to run towards digitalization in your company. Okay, what do I mean by run towards digitalization? That you can do a bare minimum digitalization, right? Possible for whatever you're doing today or whatever the government is forcing you to do today. But you have to take every single thing that you're doing on paper in the company and ask yourself the question, can this be digitized or not? Okay. If you start that process of digitalization today, then by the time it becomes mandatory, you will be 70-80% of the way there, right? So I think that's the first thing. Every single thing, in my opinion, in this world and age, whether it's interaction with your warehouse guys, whether it is doing paper submission or bill submission from the guy who's doing like some, I don't know, chai and nashta for your, you have to ask yourself the question, why can this not be digital? Because once it is digital, it becomes very easy for the whole org to process, right? Second is it has started to now pay to deal with digitally savvy and compliant counterparts. Counterparts as in the biggest counterpart being vendors, the next counterpart being distributors, right? How I think the world is shaping is that you have to have, you will only be compliant, just like GST, it will happen in other things as well, right? You will be rewarded if your ecosystem is working well, and you will be penalized in some form of fashion if your ecosystem is creating blunders. Even if you are not, and you have an ecosystem participant that is creating problems, right? Who knows? Their business may be impacted, right? Maybe they may be shut down. They may be put under some sort of penalty, and that leads to negative for your business. So I think taking an ecosystem approach is going to be very, very important, right? And the third thing is you have to move towards, as we talked about digitalization and whatnot, you have to start thinking where are the places where there are what we call programmable flows. Right? What I mean is things that can happen which are happening very high frequency and with the same set of instructions, right? And you have to automate those, right? There are lots of tools. Some people, would call it like AI, some people call it RPA, some people call it ML. It doesn't matter, right? Maybe it's like good old Visual Basic Code that is running. It doesn't matter, but you have to take the programmable flows and you have to automate, right? Once these things happen, right? Oh, sorry, one more thing I should mention is you have to take one good look at your what we call the backbone systems, right? Which are basically either the ERPs and the CRMs. Okay, this is the two fundamental sources of data capture in a company, and make sure they are of high quality, right? If these 3 or 4 things you do, in my opinion, your journey towards any sort of not just compliance, business operations starts to become simplified and streamlined, and then you can concentrate on just making your customer happy, whatever you do. So those will be my few points.
Digitalization, and for now you can start with bare minimum, but everybody and everyone has to grow, right? And relationship with digitally savvy counterparts, right now according to you it's vendor, but it's soon going to be distributors as well. And one thing that you said that CFOs should focus on is an ecosystem approach, where corporate taxpayers are rewarded for that the ecosystem being compliant or operating well, and punished if not, right? And automating every program level flows is what you're saying is the way forward, and also a high quality ERP and CRM, which is, you're saying, is a backbone system consolidation in a way, right? So great point, sir. I'll come to you, Ramesh, and I'll ask you that, what are the priorities in transformation agenda uh, if tax is to become more proactive in delivering strategic insights to the business?
Today's tax teams possess transaction level data of every transaction, and that too on a real time basis.
Right.
Undoubtedly, they have the most comprehensive data covering the entire value chain with the business. So data analytics of this data, is extremely important, be it procurement, manufacturing, sales, or distribution and the like. A digitally agile tax function could help in unlocking new opportunities in driving efficiencies, lead to optimization, and overall strategic business value, so to speak. As you can really see, the CFO's hands are really full with a lot of these changes coming in, and more focus on technology. It is indeed very challenging, but for sure interesting.
Data analytics and digitally agile tax function should be on the transformation agenda if, tax function being to be for functions to be more proactive, right? So, on that note, we've reached to the closing of our invigorating session today. Thank you so much, Ramesh, and thank you so much, Rohit, for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, to go beyond the typical role of CFO, ETCFO breaks down digital transformation in compliance for a robust, agile, and resilient future. So, as part of this initiative, Future of Compliance, brought to you by Clear from the makers of ClearTax, we'll explore various other aspects of compliance with top CFOs and industry leaders of India Inc. Thank you so much for being here with us.